Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Storm with Selena. I am Selena, and I'm excited to share with you a little bit about our host today. We have Karen Spillman today. Karen is the mother of a young man who struggled through some years of active addiction, now currently is in recovery, and she's going to share her journey with us. She's going to tell us a little bit about what her and her family have experienced through active addiction, as well as their journey through finding recovery and what life's been since then. In all fairness, I have a relationship with Karen. We know each other from living in the same community. We go to the same church together, as well as one of Karen's sons and one of my stepsons have played ball together. So we have a little bit of history. So I'm really excited to have Karen here with us today. Karen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I just want to kind of jump right in. I know a little bit of your story. We've shared with each other. Talk to me about your son. First of all, tell me about your family. How many children do you have in your family?
I have four grown sons, and 6 grandsons. One which is in heaven. He's with Jesus right now. So looking forward to seeing him one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are the light of my life. They are my life.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, it's a busy.
Yes. And so give me the names of your 4 boys.
I have Matthew and Christopher. Christopher is the one who's in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan and Ryan. Nathan is in Kentucky, and Ryan is our resident tattoo artist.
Yes. And in all fairness, Ryan also tattooed me. He did my memorial tattoo of Stephen. So yes, I guess we do know each other in another level as well.
We do.
So it was Chris who was your son who struggled with active addiction.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about what was it like with all of them boys growing up? I mean, it probably was a busy household.
It was a busy household, and they're all very close. So, there's only 4 years between my oldest and my youngest.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher is number 2, and then there's Nathan is number 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think I would have had it any other way. I think I would, if I do it, I'd do it again.
You wouldn't know anything different. That's what you've experienced.
Yeah, and it was tiring, but it was rewarding.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely rewarding.
I had 2 boys, and they always talk about mothers with boys, how busy we are, and the difference between having girls and having boys. I wouldn't know it any other way if I only had boys.
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't either. Yeah.
Right. So do you feel like through your journey with Chris, there's a lot of evidence that shows that there's usually some kind of trauma that is kind of the stepping stone that maybe what opens the door for addiction. Do you think there was anything in his childhood?
No, I don't think so. In his childhood, I really don't. I really don't see that there was anything like that in his childhood. I think more of Christopher's as an adult, especially after his divorce. Mm-hmm. That's where he starts with his testimony. Is that he went down that black spiral hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And a lot of people who experience the setbacks of divorce, it takes a while to regroup and rediscover yourself, even without dealing with active addiction.
Yeah.
It is a very difficult road to go down. So that is very traumatizing for most adults going through divorces, let alone somebody who has the hidden secret of an addiction that's hiding in loom, in your DNA makeup or whatever until you've tapped into it.
Right.
So let's start back with when did you all notice that there was an issue?
With us, where it started with us is Christopher had I could hear the garage door that opened that goes out to the garage, and I just heard that door open, and it was like 4:30 in the morning. Like, who's up? There would have been Chris, or it would have been my husband.
So did he move back in with you?
He had moved in. Yes, we had went and got him from Columbia. Uh-huh. He was struggling. Definitely was struggling there, and we said, "It's time for you to come back home," and he agreed to that. So we loaded him up and brought him back home.
Okay, so he's living in mom and dad's home now.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
He is. Yes. So I didn't, he just seemed kind of paranoid and distraught. He was, he had a rifle. It had been stolen at one time from his apartment, and he had gotten it back. He fought hard to get it back. And as he had that rifle with him, he was thinking that there was someone in the house. So he was, what do you call it? He was delusional.
He's in psychosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Brought on by the drugs, more
yes,
than likely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I tried to, I tried to talk to him. I thought, I know what was going on with him. Didn't realize what was going on with him. So the next morning, I call a psychiatrist that I know. She was a counselor at the school, and I know that she was now a licensed psychiatrist or a counselor of some sort. And I said, I'm talked to her for a little bit, and she remembered who I was, and she had asked me. She says, "Well, is there any kind of substance abuse?" And I'm like, "Oh no, not that I know of. I don't think so." So I'm thinking his mentally is, needs some help.
Mm-hmm.
So then he had taken some time off from work. He was working, and he had taken some time off from work. And his friend, just out of the blue, his friend Michelle had called. She goes, "I'm trying to get a hold of Chris. Is he there?" And I said, "Yeah, he was out in the garage with his brother Ryan and piddling." And so I handed him the phone, said it's Michelle. And this is where God came into play. She called out of the blue. She was in Holden. She wasn't living here at the time, and she was at her dad's house, which was her dad's house. And so her car wouldn't start. So she called Chris and knew that Chris would help her. And before that, we didn't realize he was isolating himself. He wouldn't go anywhere. He wouldn't do anything. So he had left the house to go help her. And
Like a good friend.
yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
She calls, he wouldn't answer.
And he went. Yeah, it's like, thank you, Lord. So after he handed me the phone back to me and Michelle, I said, I told her what was going on, what he was doing and what was going on, and she said, "I am in the mental field." I'm like, thank you, Jesus.
One more answered prayer.
One more answered prayer.
Right.
So I kind of talked to her and told her what was going on. And so it was, I don't remember what day that was. But anyway, I do realize the next time I had called her, it was a Monday. And Christopher had another episode. He'd been working on his car in the garage. And Doug went to open the garage door, and it had locked. It was latched. We never locked. So Doug said, what's going on? Did you lock the garage door? And he goes, yeah, somebody was trying to get my car.
Some more paranoia.
Some more paranoia. And so we were really, he just seemed really agitated and paranoid. And so we had left the house, and I called Michelle and told her what was going on. So she called him, and just, he was having delusions at work. He was seeing things that weren't there and things that were happening that weren't there. Couldn't figure out what was going on. So she had called him and talked to him. And so she got him to go to the hospital. He agreed to go to the hospital. And so when we got back home, he says, well, has Michelle talked to you? And I said, yeah, she did, because she told him, I'm going to keep an open communication with your mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so she had got him to agree to go to the hospital. So she had taken him to the hospital.
How'd you feel when he said that? Were you
relieved?
Relieved. Mm-hmm.
Definitely relieved. Another answered prayer, because that's all.
Had you all been talking to him about going to the hospital?
No, because we didn't I just kept telling, I did talk to him about getting some help.
Right.
Talking to a
But if it's your
psychiatrist.
first time getting help, you don't know what that avenue is.
No.
So when I asked you that question, I didn't mean for it to sound like, you guys weren't getting him help. I know as a mom, you don't know where to start looking for that
You
help.
don't.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
don't. And then when, Michelle had come back and, that was a godsend.
Mm-hmm.
So she could kind of help us and guide us in a way there. Well, he was definitely suicidal. She was coming to get him that evening, and he was having like another episode.
Mm-hmm.
And he had gone downstairs.
Had you noticed if he'd been sleeping or not sleeping?
I didn't. He was, his bedroom was downstairs, so I hadn't. He seemed to be. He had the dark circles under his eyes, though. I noticed that. But he was always up and, ready to go to church, go to work. He was always ready up and go. I mean,
Yeah.
he went to work every day.
Yeah.
And so Michelle went downstairs. I said, he's downstairs. The lights are off. I was, debating because my husband went out to the farm. I'm like, should I go out to the farm? And I'm like, no, stay here and wait for Michelle. Well, another reason, I mean, God was in this, is I'm glad I did. Because when she went downstairs and she said, I told you, he goes, he was done. He was so tired and he was just done.
Defeated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had a plan that evening to take his life.
Mm.
And God sent Michelle to come get him
Good.
before that happened. So I heard the gun. He had one shell. And his brothers, there had been an episode before that. And Matt and Ryan had went to talk to him. And they took, after the incident before, where he had his rifle, thinking somebody was in the house. We had called the cops. It scared us.
Mm-hmm.
We were scared.
Yeah.
And
Well, when somebody that you love is displaying delusional thoughts or even, discussion or talk of suicide, of course, everybody's on heightened alert at that point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the boys took his ammo away from him and didn't realize that he had kept one.
Mm.
And I heard the gun where you dislodge the bullet. And it really didn't click until she had called and she'd been there, and she stayed with him till 1:00 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And then they had taken him up to Smithville because he was suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
And she had told me he had a plan that evening to take his life.
Yeah, that's so scary.
And thank you, Jesus, that he did.
Intervention.
And it was an intervention.
Intervention.
Exactly what Michelle said. She goes, I think we just did an intervention here.
Yeah.
So
tell me about the relationship with his brothers through all of this, because you're saying that the brothers took the ammunition. Were they? Because I know brothers can be pretty harsh. They're not going to be touchy-feely with feelings.
Right.
Were they? Did they handle him Did they handle him with kit gloves, or were they, abrupt like brothers?
They were kind of like brothers. Hey, you're scaring mom and dad. They're afraid you're going to hurt them. He goes, I'd never hurt mom and dad. I was never scared. I
Mm-hmm.
never was. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know what was going on with my son.
Right.
I want to figure out what's going on with my son.
You were probably more worried he was going to harm himself than he was to hurt you.
Yeah, and my husband was worried that he would accidentally harm one of us, thinking there was somebody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that was a concern of his. But just that journey just to where he went at Smithville, I was... of course, he called, and wants me to come pick him up. And I tell him, no, I'm not going to come get you.
That's not unusual.
And she told me that. Michelle told me that. still coming down off the drugs and
Yeah.
you know, still hearing
There's lots of
voices.
rap songs that talk about, or lots of music that talks about going to rehab and wanting to leave. And there's a reason why people say that. It's because once somebody goes into rehab, the reality of having to face their problems is so scary that making everybody angry that if they leave rehab is less detrimental than having to face their problems.
Right.
Leaving rehab is the easy way out instead of it being, leaving rehab is going to continue you down that long path of pain and make everybody angry at you for not staying.
Right.
But in that frame of mind, most people can't see that.
Right. Absolutely. We have learned a lot. And, I do believe that God has just put me, I know it was a storm that we went through. Mm-hmm. It was a storm. And I know there was that reason for that storm, because now we can tell our testimonies and help praying and helping help someone else.
So he stayed in rehab?
He stayed there for a little bit.
Oh no, that was not rehab.
That was just where
mental illness. That was
I guess
mental treatment for the suicide.
I'm assuming that's what it was. Yes. So he was doing really well. He was doing really well for a while, and we got him to get his own apartment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think it was just that we maybe pushed too hard, and maybe he wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things you look back on and go,
well, I'm gonna tell you right here, right now, before you go any further, because I want moms that are watching this to also know there's no rule book, there's no directions, there's no guidance. You are strictly led by your gut and your instincts.
Absolutely.
And so any stumble or any hiccup along the way, nobody gets to blame anybody, because there's no method in how this goes.
Absolutely.
And every person that goes through recovery deserves their own path, the same as every parent that is out there trying to help their child deserves the grace of whatever mistakes that are made along the way, because you're just trying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's all you are. You're just trying to figure out what is going on.
Yeah.
But we did get him to, he went back down that black hole again with drinking, and I know in his testimony he does say that he went back to the meth, and briefly, because he knew that if he kept continuing, he was going to be back where he was. Mm-hmm. So he
and
knew.
Most usually are.
Yeah.
Yeah, most pick up right where they left off at. So that's great that he recognized
He did recognize that. And he said, in his testimony, it was a lot that he dumped down the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So praise God for that.
That took a lot of strength.
Yes. So
I have been in those environments where that drug of choice was more powerful than any amount of tears and crying and heartache that I was trying to explain to my son what he was doing to me. Those drugs were much more powerful. So he did a lot to break that cycle by dumping out those drugs.
Yeah, he did. Then he went, his anxiety and depression come back, and then he turned to alcohol and pot, trying to get that
self-medicating.
Yep. And finally, I called one of his friends, Andy, and Flores, and it was just I woke up one morning and God said, call Andy, reach out to him. So I reached out to him on Facebook, kind of telling him what was going on with Chris, because he was also a recovering addict. Mm-hmm. He had been down that road.
So he had more knowledge than even you did.
Absolutely, he did.
And you reach out to those people that have gone through that door ahead, so because you know that they'll open the door for Chris.
And he did.
Yeah.
He absolutely did. He was another one, as we call, he was another angel God sent.
Yeah.
And I know he hadn't had contact with Andy for a long time, and because of his addiction. Mm-hmm. But Andy came down one day and knocked on his door, and he was surprised to see him. Also, Chris was on some pretty good medications that really just he walked around like a zombie.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
know, just the medications for hearing the voices, and then
Yeah.
you know, the anxiety medication, and it just completely brought him down.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, I'm not gonna second guess doctors on the decisions they made but in our experience, sometimes the voices and all of that was more drug related than it was mental health related. So when they start putting in more medications, sometimes it masks and covers up, or it over medicates.
I think, yeah, exactly what was kind of Christopher's.
When they over medicate because it's a symptom due to the drugs, and then you take the drugs out of it, if you're still taking the medication, you're over medicated.
Yeah.
And so that trying to find that balance is really tricky during that time period.
And I had read up on that it
Good.
was. Yeah, I had read
smart
that
of
up.
you.
Yeah, I read up on that, you know, that trying to find that balance.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that, you know, he would just seem just, I don't want to say lethargic, but just not confused. He had told Andy his medication was making him confused.
Yeah. And a lot of people stop taking the medication because of that.
And he was he took it. I mean, he took it. But it was Andy came and got him and took him up to his place with him for a while and tried to get him out. And he did it. I was so glad that he got him out of that apartment, and he went. So, and Andy tried to get him into rehab. He was trying, and he even took him to his doctor, Chris, to the doctor with him for his checkup or whatever he was doing. He had to check him, and he just said he just wasn't ready, because we just kept praying and praying and praying, and he wasn't ready. So that was that weekend. He brought him back on a Sunday, and I think it was the next Sunday. I had talked. Well, Andy was coming for church. He was going to come down for church. He was going to try to get Chris, to come to church, and it didn't happen. So Andy went ahead and came to our church, and the ladies, one of the ladies, Jessica, she came over and grabbed him and said, "Are you Chris's friend?" And he said, "Yes." She said, "Will you come up front with me? I want to pray with you." So they grabbed JJ and Sarah and I and Jessica. We were all up front praying for Chris and praying over Andy and anointing Andy. And he just said that was the most incredible experience I've ever had.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. And we knew there was a victory coming. We knew it was going to be coming.
Never gave up. Yeah.
No, we didn't. We knew it was coming. We just didn't know when. So that next Monday after that, usually I would text Chris a Bible verse or a scripture, and he would usually answer. Well, he didn't answer. And I was getting worried. You have that mother intuition, instinct,
Yeah, and it's a kicked in the gut feeling until you can get some resolution to what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
And all moms who have had children who are in crisis, anytime something's off, we just have that instinct.
you have that instinct.
We
Yep.
know something's not right. And of course, I don't know about you, but I've had people go, "Oh, he's fine. He's fine. Quit worrying about it." You can't convince me of that.
No. Nope. That's and so my husband went in to check on him, and it was bad. It was bad. And so he come back, and I had.
And when you say bad, what are we talking
It was
about?
bad that Doug says, "I'm glad you didn't go over there," because his face was like blue. And I don't know if it was from the alcohol. It's so much alcohol that he had drank. So, and I think his eyes were very like a pinpoint. So
he was under the influence of whatever he'd been doing.
right, which was probably marijuana and alcohol. And so I know that then by then he had lost his job, and then they gave him Matt and Kim Morrow are absolutely wonderful. He's worked for them for years at Park City, and it got to where they had to let him go, and then I think that even put him even more because he lost his job, and so anyway, we had ended up calling Pete, the assistant. He's the assistant chief of police here in town, and then, as you know, and then the assistant pastor of the church. And so he went over there. He just happened to be in town. So he just happened to be at the church, and he goes, "I'll go check on him." And it was for a little bit. And what Pete says, he took an officer with him, and he said, "You think you need to go to the hospital?" And Chris said, yes. He went. They called an ambulance.
Good.
Came and got him. I know they had Narcaned him, thinking it was, he said it kind of brought him out of it a little bit, because Pete came over and told us he was headed to the hospital. So it wasn't anything. What the doctors said, he finally sobered up. But in the hospital, I called Andy and told him that Chris was on the way to the hospital. Andy says, "I'll be there as soon as I can." And just sat there at his bedside and just cried and talked to him about God. Give it to God. Let him have it. Let him take care of it. And you need to get some help. You need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he finally agreed. Andy got there. Andy says, "You ready to, get some help?" And he goes, "Yeah, I am." So, and the doctor came in and said, "You must have just got a bad batch of weed."
Well,
there was nothing.
There's so much mixed in the drugs anymore that you don't know what you're getting.
Exactly. Yes.
Everything is just, from what I'm hearing from law enforcement and agents all over, is that the fentanyl is in everything. Yeah. So, he's lucky that he had people that cared enough to go check on him. But he's also, he's got a pretty special mom that would sit there and talk to him and really convince him that this is for him.
Yeah. Well, and Andy was a big help, because he knew where to call. He got right on it. Andy was there. I mean, he right there at the hospital. We both were talking to him, trying, and he was finally, had sobered up enough. And Andy worked hard. We kept calling these places to get him in. We need to get him in now. We need to get him here. He's saying, "Yes, let's go."
And I'm going to stop you right there, because I think it's important to talk about having somebody that makes those phone calls, having somebody that knows that system. Most people who are ready to go have treatment for the first time, they don't know how to get into a rehab.
I didn't know where to start.
They don't know that it takes somebody who probably knows somebody to even start that process, and you have to be ready to go. You can't wait around.
Yeah.
You can't say, "I'll go tomorrow and start looking for a bed today."
Right.
Because if they have a bed, you're expected to immediately leave and go to that bed.
Right.
And most people who are, think about it. He's been in the hospital. He feels horrible mentally. He feels horrible physically. And then if he didn't have you and Andy, who was going to make those phone calls for him?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times that's the case, is that people don't have anybody to help them through that. So,
No, they give you information. Here's Compass Health. Here's, a Recovery Lighthouse in Warrensburg, because he was at the Warrensburg Hospital. Mm-hmm. And Andy was frustrated with that.
Oh, yeah.
He was frustrated with that. He goes, he goes, "This isn't anything."
It's a small community hospital.
Right. Yes.
The closest hospital to our small town.
Right. Yep.
And those are the resources in a small community. That's the resources that you have. I know now, going forward, if somebody came to me and said, "I'm in trouble, I need help," I'm going to tell them to go to the city.
Yeah.
Because there's more resources
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Andy got him in somewhere?
He did. Well, first of all, he was having trouble trying to find a place if they had a bed. And the doctors were willing, the doctor on call was willing to keep him there overnight and give him the medication. And he knew what kind of medication that he was going to need, to give him that medication. I said, you give this to him, to help him with his cravings, to help him with the detox. And he's like, yeah, we'll just keep him right here. They had, and I was grateful.
Oh, yeah.
We were grateful.
Oh, yeah.
But Andy kept calling around, and he finally, so when they got there or something.
And that's almost in itself just a crisis right there.
Yes, it is.
Trying to get into a facility, we are ready. And a lot of times those places, they are the ones that kind of sing and dance around and don't get back to you, don't return phone calls. It's very challenging in that moment of crisis.
I know that he was several places. He was, they didn't have beds. No, we need to get him in tonight, Well, it didn't happen. It didn't happen that night. Something, they either called and they didn't have a bed, or when they called him, I don't remember. But, so he ended up staying at Andy's. He did have kind of a rough night, but Andy stayed there with him. And called me the next morning and said, we're going now, where he got him into a detox center. And Chris was there for a few days. I expected longer, but Andy called me Sunday morning before he was getting ready to go to church, and he said, they're releasing him. I'm like, well, what do you mean they're releasing him? He hadn't been there, but just a few days. And they said, when he went to he called Andy to come pick him up. So what had happened, I guess, Andy asked him, they needed the bed, and Christopher was doing well enough. He was doing good. So they released him.
Detoxing.
Yeah.
So he completed detox.
So he went to Andy's again and stayed with Andy. And, and I know, I was like begging him, you're going to continue, right? You're going to continue with recovery. You're going to continue, and just practically begging him. And he told me yes. And I remember Andy telling me, he says, I told him this, you can't do it for your mom, can't do it for your kids. You got to do it for yourself.
Yeah, and I was sitting there when you're saying that. I have been in that same position. We want it so badly for them.
Absolutely.
We will negotiate and, bribe and guilt and everything we can to try to make them open their eyes to see the light that we see.
Exactly.
But we all as we've dealt with it for a period of time, we all finally realize no amount of our wanting convinces them to want it. It's something that it's a decision that's made in their mind, in their heart. Yeah.
I truly believe that also God pulled him out. God pulled him out of break that chain, to break that stronghold. He wanted it. He wanted it. I mean, just plain and simple. He wanted to get better. So Andy had called, and we had talked to him. I think he had called on his way home from work, and Chris was still at his house. And where he was going to take him, and I don't remember where, but I said he needs to go somewhere where he can, whatever it is that is causing him to drink or do drugs.
He needed the tools.
He needed to get to the root of what is going on.
Yeah.
He needs
and
that.
As much as I completely agree with you about the. I understand the faith involved in it. I truly believe that I did more prayers on my knees than I think I did anything else, because I had to turn it over to God, and I had to really just search for a way to ease my mind and settle my anxieties down. But at the end of the day, along with the component of a higher power, there also is free will. And that is so difficult.
God gives you free will.
Yes. And it's so difficult as a parent because you're thinking, I'm praying, I'm doing everything, I'm supporting, I'm letting him figure this out. The free will part of it is still so challenging as the parent sitting back watching this, because you know as well as I do, the only barrier standing there is the decision in the mind. Because God wants it, you want it,
Exactly.
we all want it.
But that enemy gets in there.
That
The
yeah.
enemy gets in there.
Absolutely.
And he's like telling you, oh, you don't
barrier-
need to do that. You need to do this
Right.
and you need to do that. The enemy gets in there, and God is stronger than the enemy. Let God take a hold of him and let him bring you out of that. He's the light. He is that light in that darkness.
Yeah, yeah. And as I'm sitting here thoroughly, my heart is full of joy and happiness. And at the same time, we know our stories are a little bit different.
Absolutely,
I lost
yes.
my son.
Yeah.
And
And my heart
I know.
breaks.
I know.
You know that how I feel. Yes.
I know. I mean, we've been very open and honest about that. I also know that we did everything we could do, and recovery wasn't our road.
Yeah.
And for everyone that finds that recovery, I will stand and celebrate with them. Right.
Absolutely.
So.
But I feel God is giving you that.
Yes.
This is something God has want you to
Yes.
do.
So let me say it like this, because I was struggling with trying to find the right words. I think the best way to describe this is Stephen could not have lived or suffered the tragedy of his death without the greatest impact coming from it.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be through what I share and the testimony I share with others about what we went through. So the reason why I'm even tiptoeing in this is because I know a lot of people watch my podcast, and they're going to know that your journey and my journey are completely different.
Yeah.
So I wanted to address that, is that for every path that leads to recovery, I am not saddened by that path, because that wasn't the path that we got to. I'm going to celebrate in glorious celebration with everyone who makes that journey to recovery, because our journey is about sharing these stories. Our journey is about
saving someone else.
Yes, telling our story to help others. So I'm tiptoeing in there because I know I'm going to get a little bit of people reaching back out to me and asking me about how do we sit and we talk about journeys of recovery when our journey wasn't that. Our journey is about recovery. It's going to be the recovery of other people that learn from our stories.
Absolutely. And even your own recovery from you recovering from the loss of your son.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that you are in a type of recovery yourself.
Well, and honestly, the recovery that I'm in, I don't know that it'll ever be the law of recovering from the pain and hurt of losing my son.
Absolutely
But it is in when your children are suffering in active addiction. We are different parents.
Yeah.
We are on the edge of insanity, because our anxiety is through the roof, because our nerves are fried, because we don't have the answers and we have no control over what's happening. And that is just as toxic as being in active addiction.
Yes.
So the recovery I have is knowing my son's no longer in active addiction, and my journey takes a different turn.
Absolutely.
And that's what my recovery is.
Yeah. And God uses that. He's using that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I believe that too.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
So I didn't mean to
No,
hijack
that was
the story.
No. Yeah. That was good.
I didn't mean to hijack the story.
Yeah.
But I knew that we were going to get some questions about that. So I figured we'll just answer
them right then and there.
Right.
Yeah, he is in recovery. Yes. He went into comprehensive health, and he got him in there, and 30 days later he came out in recovery and has been sober for over a year now.
Does he talk about what he learned in?
No.
Okay, so he keeps that very tight.
Christopher doesn't share his feelings much. No,
That's
he
not
didn't.
unusual for men.
No,
I
no,
mean,
it's not.
we'd like for them to share more,
Yeah,
but that's not unusual.
he doesn't share that much. No, he didn't say, but
He didn't share with you that he had a breakthrough or
no, he
no?
didn't share any.
Okay. Okay.
And his testimony is he gives credit to Michelle and to Andy for helping it, and his family and his whole family, and God. He most importantly gave the glory to God. But I mean, there were things in there, and he put that, some people know this and some people don't, that we didn't realize that it started with heroin. We didn't realize that then it went to fentanyl.
Yeah.
And then he moved home and then it went to meth.
Well, it was probably, I mean, anytime you're messing with any of those, there's still the fentanyl in it.
Yep.
We're not avoiding it. But yeah, that's amazing that he was able to, if he's somebody who struggles with openly sharing, but for him to give his testimony.
And put it on Facebook
Yeah.
was bold.
Yeah.
Bold move. And that is something he does go to Celebrate Recovery, and he has done that for over a year. And I go with him. It is amazing. It is Christ-centered. It is an amazing recovery
I'm sure
program.
that's very bonding for the two of you.
Yes and no. He's, again, he doesn't really share a lot, but I think that it is Christ-centered. We're there together. I have learned a lot being in the class with the women. I know that he does share, and that it doesn't matter to me what he shares as long as he's talking and he's sharing. Getting that out.
What have you learned from going to Celebration Recovery?
That a lot of it is that they're ashamed. They're embarrassed. It is a lot that it is trauma in their lives. Most of not of their own, not by their hands, by someone else's hands.
Yeah. Have they shared or offered you any strategies, suggestions for parents? Do they?
They don't, and it just in the classes you do. It is 12 steps and the 8 principles, all Christ-centered. But it's maybe a lot of sharing, and I know in the women's group, I have had some of the girls say, we see what it's like, what we do to our parents. We see your side of it.
Yeah.
What we did to
That's valuable too.
To our parents. We understand now.
And sometimes it's easier to see that or grasp that when it's somebody else saying it versus a parent saying it to them.
Yeah, oh,
They're
sure.
able to see from a position that is not, in a position that isn't aggressive to them.
Right.
They're not having an argument with the parent. They're not hearing it and it's guilt-ridden from a parent. They're hearing it and they're feeling their own feeling about it instead of a feeling that's projected onto them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that was, that was a big thing for me, that I hope, that they understand what their parents were going through.
Right.
I know that a lot of them, their families don't.
No, absolutely.
They
and
don't.
I've discovered that too since I've started sharing about my stories. I do a family group. I go occasionally to Recovery Lighthouse. They have a family night. And I have gone in there and I have shared. And some days I have to remind myself that I can't trauma bomb everybody because what we dealt with is pretty traumatic. So when I do share, it's rarely that I walk out of there that somebody doesn't come and ask me if they can hug me.
Yeah.
And they think they're doing it for me, but we all know they're doing it because they need it.
Yeah,
because something in my story resonated with them.
Yes. I've had that. The girls came to me and I was telling the first time I went, and these group of ladies are amazing. Just they're what God has done in their lives to begin with, and where they've come from and where they are now. They say, "Can I hug you?" And I'm like, "Absolutely," And one of the girls told me, which we have bonded and you bond with them. You
Of
really
course you do. You're sharing an experience with
Exactly.
them,
And she goes, "It's just our demons. It's our demons. It's not you.
yeah.
It's our demons."
Well, it was very kind of her
And
to
it
say
was
that to you. Really powerful.
it was powerful. And I'm like, "Oh, that yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little more, you can understand that.
I
When it's-
can.
When it's, just the description of what it was is a little more palpable when you can understand, oh yes, it's not my son in there. That is not
My
who's
son.
doing
Yep.
this. Yeah.
It is demons.
Yeah.
And it is the enemy.
And I had to find a way to be able to see past Stephen's active addiction to remind myself that's still my son in there.
Yeah.
And
You're going to fight.
yeah. And during bouts of psychosis, it's hard to see them in there because they're hiding that. That psychosis is covering up every bit of who they are. And that psychosis sees you as the enemy, and they are fighting you and being nasty and angry to you. And honestly, I got really good. A lot of people in my family and close around me would say, "How in the world do you put up with him talking to you like that?" I said, "Because that's not my son." I said, that's the garbage that has stolen the soul of my son. But that is not my son.
And I remember saying, I fought. I telling Jessica, I said, I feel like I fought the devil hard. And she goes, "It wasn't your fight. It's God."
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't your fight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've made the comment many a times, I chased my son to the grave. And I think any parent that is invested that deeply will do the same thing.
Oh, yes.
So I don't feel like I did anything more or anything different than most parents would do had they been on the road we've been down, had been in my shoes. So
We just now know more.
oh yeah, and once you're educated, you know more, and you have to do more.
And I still feel like I'm still learning. I'm still learning.
Oh, absolutely.
Still
Absolutely.
But I'm comfortable. I mean, God has put me in places and in people's lives and people's in my life that this is not my plan. It's God's plan.
Right. Yeah, you
So-
shared with me today that you've just recently spoke to somebody.
I did.
And you shared a little bit, and honestly, that's what coming out of the shadows and the shame and
That she's not alone.
yeah, and that's what you need is a community that surrounds you.
And you feel like it, yeah, you
Because
feel like
parents
it,
are
yeah.
made to feel, sometimes even by the industry, "Mom, go home. We've got him." But people don't understand that the parents are also in this too.
Oh, yeah.
That we are affected by it too, and we need education, and we need community support, and we need to be surrounded. And if the recovery industry isn't going to provide that, then we have to be the mom squad that goes and says, "I've been where you're at. Let's
Absolutely.
go have lunch.
Yeah.
Let's get together. Let's talk." Because if we don't do that, then we've left mothers, and I'm not saying not just mothers. There's fathers, sisters, brothers, all of
sure,
it.
yes.
But when you leave them isolated, they feel the stigma, and we need to start communicating and letting other families know we've got to take away the stigma of our family is struggling with addiction. It isn't shameful. It's an issue that we all need to be aware of.
It is an illness. It's an illness.
And we need to be supporting each other. If your family had somebody come down with cancer, there isn't anybody in your immediate family and external family, church family, friends that wouldn't come by and sit and visit and talk.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But because it's addiction, it's taboo. It's, I don't want to go in over there. And that's not the way we should be.
No.
We should be, they need us.
Yeah.
Let's
And
go
that-
take
yeah.
them something to eat because they're going through hell. They need to have support.
Yes.
But we haven't passed that stigma yet. We haven't pushed through that. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do is to let's talk about it.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, you, Pastor Mike, I mean, if you're still a person that's in addiction, come to church.
Yeah.
Let God give it to God. You are invited. It doesn't, you think you're not worthy. You are worthy.
Yeah.
You are
It is.
worthy.
And
That
I
is the
think
best
it's
place for
important
you.
for us to recognize sometimes it's hard to ask for help because we're embarrassed and ashamed.
Sure.
But if you see a family that's struggling, make the extra effort and go invite them.
Oh,
Go
yes.
ask them, hey, is there anything we can do for you? And share your testimony with them because I think shared testimony gives us a place of feeling safe.
I have done that. I have Pastor Pete had me reach out to a lady from the church, and it was a different situation. It wasn't addiction, but it was a different situation.
Yeah.
Just her son,
Yeah.
and you reach out and tell her your story with your son, and where basically your testimony and where he is at now, meaning. He has accepted the Lord. He is baptized. He is the Lord is leading him.
Just community, the fellowship of community, sometimes is all it takes for that family to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
That
And somebody cares.
somebody cares and we're not alone.
Yeah. Yes.
That we are not, balancing this or taking on the weight by ourselves.
Yeah. And she was, and she is a recovering addict herself of 26 years and almost relapsed, and she goes, I told her my story. If we talked about God, it was, we had a good conversation and she had almost relapsed. And she goes, I broke that. She sent me a text and she goes, I heard your voice. I heard your story. I heard your son's story, I told that in Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That I'm like, but it's not my glory. That's God's glory.
Yeah.
That's not me. God is using me for His work, and this is my path that He has put me on.
And a lot of times, just explaining to people that they don't have to carry that burden alone.
Yeah.
And a lot of times just knowing that burden is not theirs alone to carry.
And
sharing that with others in that fellowship of carrying it with others, or even just having the relationship with Christ to be able to know, I'm not alone in this.
Christ is, you have a relationship with Jesus. He is there. Just reach out to Him.
Yeah.
He is always there. He knows you because you are chosen by Him. You are chosen. He has chose you. Your addiction, whatever it is, He is there and He loves you. And He is waiting for you to just accept His love. That's all He wants.
So tell me a little bit about where's your family at now? How are you all as a family? We know that you've navigated into recovery, but how are the brothers now?
They are so proud of their brother. I mean, support him completely. They are. I know.
Ryan shared a little bit
And I'm glad. I'm heard that he understands a little bit more. I think at first, he didn't understand. If you don't understand, go to a Celebrate Recovery or talk to someone because, he has trauma, but his trauma is not that bad. But it's his trauma.
Yeah. It's his trauma. You can't judge
You
somebody's
can't
trauma.
say, it's, you can't, their trauma's not that bad.
You can't say that.
You can't say that.
Right. I wouldn't wish what happened to us on anybody. And I get told, we don't know how you did that. Well, my trauma isn't for you to figure out how you would. This was mine to carry.
Yeah.
Same as it is for somebody else.
Yeah.
And whatever is their, the burden of their trauma, it's not for us to judge how they managed it.
No,
whether
it's
they
not.
whether they managed it through drugs and alcohol or church or family support or therapy and counseling, however their path is, we hope for a healthy path, but it's the same as we can't judge the level of their trauma. We also know that however they find the recovery through their trauma was their journey.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, they are very supportive of him. They're proud of him. You know, they are. They know that they know it was by the glory of God, and that he wanted to recover. He wanted to.
So what are you doing now? Well, maybe let's go back. Did you have anything that you did to help survive through that? Did you work through any self-care? Were you doing things to help ease your mind in your
Probably with me it would be prayer. You know,
Yeah.
just turning to God and just prayer, because I know what else to do. Our church was very supportive. We had amazing ladies. We had an amazing women's group, Bible study. I mean, they were just there to listen and pray and
awesome.
love and tell me it's going to be okay. A victory's coming. I
Yeah.
see it coming.
That support for you?
That support for me was big. Yeah, just being involved in the women's ministry and church, you know, and the Bible, just that helped. It doesn't make it. It's still hurt, and it was still there, you know.
Right.
But and then to just trust God, knowing that it is going to happen. It will happen.
And how was your husband? How did he go lean into church? Did he have another way of dealing with it?
I think he had another way of dealing with it. You know, we've talked, and I've told him, and it kind of come between us a little bit. And I said, that is the enemy, that is the devil. He wants that between us. So you have to rethink. You have to turn to God. You have to rethink your thinking of how you're handling this.
Mm-hmm.
Because
how's the relationship now?
our relationship is fine. Yeah, we're fine. And
Him and his dad? How
with Chris and his dad, it's about the same. I mean, he's still quiet, you know. But I think Doug is a little bit more understanding. You know, and he got him to go into the men's Bible study, and that has helped him, and I think that has helped him heal.
Good.
Just be surrounded by those people, you know, just being surrounded that know what's going on and are praying for you and love you, you know, no matter what it is, you know.
Yeah, good.
They're good. So I think that has helped him heal.
So is Chris now back working?
Christopher is now back working. He is that family. I said Kim and Matt Morrow are amazing Christian people themselves. I had, when Chris got baptized, I reached out to her and told her that Christopher had been baptized. You know, they kind of went through this with us too.
Sure.
And she had called me and she said, well, what, you know, before, I'm kind of backing up a little bit, but, you know, what is going on with Christopher? And I think his anxiety and his depression. And she goes, I just can't, I'm going to have to let him go. And you do what you have to do.
Yeah, you have to make a business decision. Yeah.
So, but fast forward, I had reached out and told her that he had been baptized, and she back, praise the Lord, you know, nice text. And Chris was helping. Ryan was building a house, so he went and helped Ryan, you know, do some painting and worked on the house, and that helped out Ryan. Ryan helped, you know, gave him a little money to helping him do it, and so that put a little bit of money. And I guess one day he was out there, and Kim called and said, offered him a job at the Garden City parts, because they have one in Holden and they had one in Garden City. And he would be starting that Monday.
That's amazing.
It is another, like I said, that is another of the things.
More doors.
Doors that God had opened for him.
More doors that are open.
They know he's good at his job. He knows auto part. He's done it since he was right out of high school.
Yeah.
So, you know, they know his capability. They know
now
that
he was healed and in recovery and on the right path.
Absolutely.
You know, they could invest in him again.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so your family feels fortunate that you guys have bridged this gap, and now we're looking at recovery. And I mean, we all know recovery is it's work. It's work. It doesn't come easy, and it's something you guys are always going to be navigating.
And he's like Matthew has said, that you're the strongest person I know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
He is. That is. And that's always still in the back of your mind, a little bit of relapse.
Yeah.
But I
Fear.
know God's got him.
Yeah.
I know that.
In the back of your mind, though, as a mom, I know you're probably always paying attention. I know I did
Yes.
too. You're always paying attention. Is this normal? Is this okay? Is he tired? Don't beat yourself up for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say from one mom to another, we've been traumatized too by going through this. And I think it's natural, and all your faith is in the right place. I would never tell you not to believe in your faith, but we always are going to be just a little bit.
It's always,
We're always going to be on top of it. We're going to be very diligent about paying attention to the details. And I think that's normal. And I think we would not do ourselves justice if we didn't, to be on top of being guarded and cautious.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it is. But just a lot of prayer and continued prayer. And I know that he'll continue with his recovery. He seems to be very adamant about that, and stay on top of his recovery.
I have no doubt that he's very active in his recovery and continues to want to have that recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just the proof that he is in church every Sunday, and that is a lot of people have said that it's good good that he's
it's the practice of
it
just
is.
being involved in his relationship with Christ, but that also what keeps him centered in recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And that we have had standing in the gap there. Pastor Mike has had them there and their testimonies and what they've went through. I think it's amazing that he is involved with your recovery, and he'll recognize that sometimes. How many years have you been in recovery? And it was amazing. Mike and Rhonda came when he got his 1-year chip at coin at Celebrate Recovery. He had family and friends from church that came and supported him in that.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Well, that's something to celebrate.
Yeah. It was. Sorry, I saw him get his coin, and he looked at that coin, and he flipped it and shook his head like, I did it.
Yeah. Proud of himself. Yeah.
He should be.
It is an accomplishment to have that 30-day or that 1 year. Each one of those steps is an accompliment of hard work.
Oh, 30 days in, 60 days in, 90 days in, you bet. There are many that are many years of recovery.
Yeah.
Many
absolutely.
years.
I have a lot of people who reach out to me through my social media, through the campaigns that I push out on social media, and every single time somebody shares with me, I have 30 days, I have 60 days, I have 1 year. I don't let those opportunities pass. I don't just do a really quick text message or a response to them. Hey, that's great. I usually make a video about it because I try to make sure that people know those are big accomplishments.
They are big accomplishments.
And
absolutely.
those are to be proud at. That we're to be proud of those things for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is one thing at Celebrate Recovery. And that was, we had told him he needs to continue with his recovery. And I had talked to Janet at church, and it's just the way God works. And she goes, well, I think there's a Celebrate Recovery in Warrensburg. And then she asked the pastor's wife, Rhonda, and she goes, well, I don't know, but Bill and Regina go. So I talked to Regina, and they're like, yeah, come on, and it's amazing. And I'm like, what am I going to do for 4 hours? I was going to take him,
right.
Because I told him, you go, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
And she goes, come to class with me. Just come to class with me, and it's been amazing.
Yeah.
So you learn a lot. I've learned a lot, but like I said, this is just God's path He has me on.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story today. I've known, we've sat and talked before, so I've known this story, but I love the fact that you give all that glory to God, but most importantly, you really credit your son
Yes.
in his steps of what he continues, the path he's walking on.
Absolutely.
And you talk about your family in such a loving manner about how they've surrounded you guys, how they continue to support Chris.
Yes.
And a lot of times that's not the case with families.
Yeah,
A lot
absolutely.
of times families are just so tore apart with it. And it's great to see a family that stuck together and supported him through this, continued to support him through it. So, you know, a lot of love goes to that family too,
Yeah.
to the rest
Thank
of your
you.
family members. But we appreciate you sitting down with me today.
Well,
and
thank you for
sharing.
having me.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Happy to share my testimony,
Yeah.
share my son's story.
Yeah, because it's going to help others. It's going to
Yes.
help others
I
who
pray for
are
that.
in those same trenches in the battle, and they hear your testimony of your story, and they're going to say, "That sounds like my family," or "I would like my family to be more like this." So I greatly appreciate your time today.
Well, again, thank you for asking me. I was very excited.
Yeah.
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 So,
So as you guys have listened to our story today, I hope that you will like, click, share, subscribe, all of the above, and most importantly, in the comments, leave messages down in the comments because we would love to hear how these stories are impacting you. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today.